the committee for the opportunity to make this statement with regards to the plight of general aviation in Australia. Based on my 20 plus years of industry experience, 20 years in aviation departments, CAA and CASA, and nearly 20 years as the Executive Director of AMROBA, I can state that general aviation operations and civil aviation activities have never been in a worse condition, legislative or regulatory-wise. During my time as a regulator, I had the privilege to serve for a few years on the prestigious International Directors of Maintenance Group, a small committee of the top 6 aviation regulators, maintenance managers. That gave me great insight into international harmonisation. All members of this group stated compliance with the Convention Annexes Standards and Practice for Operations and Engineering fields will enable Australia to harmonise with all major aviation regulatory systems. The FAA, Transport Canada, the JAA, the EASA were part of that committee. It's an important statement to remember. AMROBA was created in 2002 by a few small to medium civil aviation design and maintenance businesses in Sydney to provide an advocacy to government, associated departments and agencies. It now has membership in every state and territory of Australia. During the decade before AMROBA, the 1990s founding fathers of AMROBA witnessed small business and individual responsibilities being removed or at least diminished, especially with the 1988 major regulatory changes. I totally agree and support the AMROBA's management and members' views that government departments and agencies have lost all global and domestic vision to create what should be a job-creating civil aviation industry. There is a reason why. The government in 1988 intentionally or unintentionally split the responsibilities of the Chicago Convention's annexes to various departments and agencies without legislating that these departments and agencies had to carry out and give effect to the Chicago Convention's annexes, standards and practices. From 47 to 88, civil aviation was growing. From 88, general aviation and engineering has not, and there is a reason why. From 47 to 88, 41 years, the Air Navigation Act, Section 26, stated the Governor-General may make regulations, not inconsistent with the Act, it can be for the purpose of carrying out and giving effect to the Chicago Convention as amended by the protocols, any annex to the Convention relating to international standards and recommended practices. Carrying out and giving effect to global standards and practices is what you expect in government legislation for Australia to comply with this important global civil aviation treaty, the Convention. Australia was more compliant with the Convention as Annex pre-88 because of this obligation in the Air Navigation Act. Over the last 33 years, CASA, the Department and other responsibilities have not been required to develop regulations to carry out and give effect to the Convention Annexes, Standards and Practices. The infrastructure's website states CASA is responsible for Annexes 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 14, 18, 19 and shared responsibilities for the Annexes 4, 10, 11 and 15. CASA is also responsible for developing our regulatory framework. The Civil Aviation Act Section 98 does not require the making of regulations to carry out and give effect to the Convention's annexes, standards and practices. This is why we now have unique Australian regulations and standards. US Aviation Act requires minimum regulations to ensure safety that give effect to the annexes, standards and practices. New Zealand places the responsibility on the Minister to ensure that New Zealand's obligations under international civil aviation agreements are implemented. There's a conceptual difference. Minimum regulations carry out and give effect to the Convention and standards and practice by other nations versus Australia's prescriptive regulations that don't necessarily carry out or give effect to the Convention's annexes, standards and practice. The outcome is Australia now has unique regulations that has led to inquiry after inquiry, and now this inquiry with global recognition. The 1988 Civil Aviation Regulations did not copy all of the navigation regulations and orders. Over 1,200 small flying schools were disenfranchised in 88. Additional regulatory changes soon after also caused the loss of many small directly supervised maintenance organisations, the start of the GA collapse. Aviation maintenance personnel training standards no longer have to comply with the annex's standards and practices. Other government-initiated changes a few years back also privatised airports that has not benefited general aviation operators, flying training or the engineering fields of design, maintenance and manufacturing. Instead of a viable aviation industry on airports, the industry has been reduced and replaced by non-aviation businesses, especially at metro airports. The general aviation operations sectors and engineering activities have been trying to recover from these changes since that time. In our opinion, government has not legislated since 1988 to develop a civil aviation regulatory system that carries out and gives effect to the conventions, annexes, standards and practices. AMROBA would like to make it very clear. Aviation technical speeds within AMROBA's membership far exceeds those that are employed with the government and its agencies. Some members have more practical experience with foreign aviation regulatory systems, such as the FAA, the EASA, Canada, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea aviation regulatory systems, as they hold approvals from those countries so that they can actually trade in these foreign countries. There is no government-to-government agreements to recognise and accept in our own right CASA-approved organisation or the government aviation certificates by other trading nations outside the limited PASA with the USA and New Zealand. Members holding multiple NAA approvals recommend and support adopting the fast structure and system to advance Australia's general aviation operations, pilot training and engineering fields of design, manufacturing, maintenance and technical training in our Asia-Pacific region, mainly with the USA. Finally, this won't happen until government includes in aviation-specific acts a requirement for regulations to once again carry out and give effect to the convention standards and practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canane.